Hello fellow modelers, Bruce here again. I think it was time for just a quick update on the progress on my double deck layout, with the lower deck being the Jersey Highlands Railroad as explained in previous videos, and the upper deck, which at this point is quite a mess, being the HON3 Slate Run Railroad. Been working mostly on the lower deck, and progress of late since the weather got warm and the yard was calling for all kinds of work. I've been trying to get about an hour a day in, but that's split between building some structures and working on the layout. But anyway, this is the slate pit end of the Bangor Slate extension to the Jersey Highlands. That's the pit. We've shown some of this before, including the scratch building of those three slate splitters sheds, the office building, which is the Campbell Columbia Gazette building, scratch built company store, and the Glurcraft modified certainly, but freight house, Bangor Slate. And then continuing on, a little raised area that has some company housing, and a little barnyard for the company workers so they can have fresh eggs and milk. The waterfall scene that I documented on previous video, King Post Bridge that I built back in February, March area, and some trees I just finished building, the deciduous trees. Just built that little house, which was laser cut. I'm working on another house or two for over here, little outbuildings and houses, and that will be all that's on this branch. I have not yet laid the track down, but I do have the cork road bed down. And yep, that's kind of where we are up on the extension for the Bangor Slate area. Now, moving into the bigger area, the peninsula, first thing I've done is decided that I will continue the mountain using the foliage clusters from Woodland Scenics, as I did there, for a little while longer. I think you can see the outline of the mountain that I've penciled in. And when it gets to about there, and now we're underneath the upper deck where it's going to widen out and will be largely hidden, I'm going to go to a photo backdrop using kind of eastern mountains. These are not contiguous the way they're going to be, but I've just stretched them out there to give you the idea. So this one here will blend into where I finish with the foliage clusters, and then I'll make sure the rest of them blend as you go this way. I put some lighting underneath the upper deck already, but I'm going to have to wait for the little more progress on the upper deck before I put the remaining lighting in. Just for a quick look at the upper deck, pretty much empty at this point. I need to be careful how I assemble things, because I need to be able to stand up in there to work on the backdrop. So the next steps are going to be finish this backdrop on the lower deck all the way to the end, then come back and do the upper deck backdrop from that corner all the way again to the other side. Now when you get to that section right there where you see the bars coming out, that is going to be a mid-peninsula mountain that goes all the way to just behind that Dunkin' Donuts container. Probably be about 1.5 feet tall mountain. And then, so if you're standing, you won't see what's on the other side of it. And that's kind of the plans. Once I get the backdrops done, top and bottom, and that's this summer's project, then I will work on this mountain. Then I can start putting this wood into this area, the plywood and the foam, and start working on laying the track on the upper deck. The only other thing I've done is mounted, because they're going to be hard to get at later, pretty much all the NMRA plaques that I received as I earned my MMR, and yep, that's worked hard to get those, so I figure I might as well display them, not leave them in a box. So, all right, talk to you again soon. As I was talking, doing the backdrops along the upper and the lower decks is the summer project, between some structure building and a lot of yard work and barbecuing and visiting family, etc., etc. So right now you can see that the backdrop is all sky on the upper level. So it's just like an open palette, nothing more. I mean, that keeps going in and out of focus. But anyway, it's certainly going to be a mountain backdrop of some type, yet to be fully determined. Well, let's look just briefly down this long shelf, just like on the bottom there's another shelf above it. And at the end of the shelf, I'm currently planning on having an engine servicing facility on the Slate run, which will be both HO and HON3. And the showpiece at the end here is a fine scale miniature two-stall engine house that's somewhat modified, different windows, different doors that I made, and some changes, that's for sure. But anyway, it's, for those familiar with the kit, you can see it as a fine-scale miniature two-stall engine house. And for the sanding facility, that's a Campbell kit that I've talked about in other videos. And all the detailed parts for the sanding bin and the spout and so forth were missing from this old kit, and so I had to have a friend 3D print the canister for the sand, and then I fabricated the rest of it out of a styrene. Water will be provided from a scratch-built water tank that I did a 3-part video on my channel. And then coaling will be from another fine-scale miniature kit there, coaling station. And that bucket loading coaling station that they put out a long time ago. There will be 2 tracks coming along here. Well, actually 1 track most of the way, and then a gauge separation turnout going into the left stall of the engine house will be dual gauge trackage, so that either HO scale standard gauge engine can enter there, or a narrow gauge HON3 engine. And then separating off to the right bay of the engine house will be a strictly HON3. So that's why they call it a gauge separation turnout. The turnout coming off to the right will just be the narrow gauge. So that much is determined. What else goes on this shelf prior to reaching that is a little bit open, but here's my thoughts. One of the reasons I chose the Slate Run Railroad out of the dozens and dozens of logging railroads in Pennsylvania, all of which were fairly well documented in a series of books, one of whose authors was Tom Tabor, who I had spoken to. The reason I chose the Slate Run was for a few of its features. First of all, it was 3-foot gauge. It did interchange with a standard gauge Class 1 railroad, so there was some dual gauge trackage. But it was one of only several logging railroads in Pennsylvania that had a covered railroad bridge. And I wanted to be able to model a covered railroad bridge. And I can talk about some of the other distinctions that it had later, but the railroad covered bridge is pertinent to what's going on this shelf. Because somewhere in this area here, much as right below it, I intend to have a stream cut in, and that's where the covered railroad bridge will be. So before I can do any sketching of the mountains onto the backdrop or any work on the backdrop, I have to determine how wide of a cut I'm going to put into the foam, and probably there'll be one more layer of foam on top of this yet, just as on the bottom deck. And we'll take a look at the covered bridge that I have a kit for, because originally I was going to scratch build it, but then, you know, I saw a Campbell covered bridge come up for sale at a price, quite frankly, that you just couldn't resist. So I bought it, and we'll just talk a little bit about that and some of the, I'll say, issues that are associated with that covered bridge. So I'll be back in a minute, and we'll look at the bridge plans. Alrighty, let's talk about the Campbell covered bridge kit and the challenges that it gives me in terms of using it. Its major problem is its overall length as designed. Here is the, let me not lose these parts a minute here. These are the plans. And, you know, it's basically their Howe truss, H-O-W-E, truss bridge, covered in. And as designed, from one end of this drawing to the other, it's about 105 feet long. Now, if you remember, on the lower deck, my little king post bridge is about 32 feet long. And, you know, I was certainly not looking to put a chasm in that upper deck 105 feet long. I think it would overpower the scene. So yeah, what am I trying to do here? What I'm trying to do is shorten the basically truss construction by removing a number of sections. For each of these sections that I can remove, I shorten it by about 12 feet. So if I only remove two of them, which is, I think, fairly simple, taking out an even number, I can shorten it by 24 feet, so down from, let's say, 105 to about 80 feet. But I'd actually like it more like taking three of those out, so shortening it by 36 feet down to about a 70-foot bridge. So what I plan on doing, and it's going to take a little canoodling, but I'm going to photocopy both the side view and the bottom view, and try to cut and paste to see what it looks like if I remove 2 or 3 sections of it. The actual building of a shorter bridge is not that big of a problem. I have the material for this, so I certainly have the material for a shorter one. So yeah, I just have to see how it kind of all fits together. And yeah, I really don't want to build a 105-foot bridge for that upper deck. So that's the issue. And I need to not necessarily build the bridge, but I need to solve the problem of shortening the bridge prior to me sketching the backdrop, so I know how big to make the cut in the mountain behind it, over the chasm or gorge, whatever you want to call it, that I'm going to cut into the foam. So yeah, in only about 2 weeks we'll have 6 of the grandkids staying over for a little while, and So I don't want to get into this project prior to that, but once that visit is over, I will start really working on this bridge, at least on the design level. So that's the Campbell covered bridge. This is what it looks like. So you have an opening here where you see some of the truss work, and the overall sketch for the cross view of the end of the bridge and so forth is not very overpowering. It'll be fine in that scene as long as I can shorten it. All right, so that's that bridge. As long as we're talking about bridges, I plan on probably a trestle and another bridge on the upper deck. Logging railroads had to do a lot of trestle work and quick bridge work and so forth. I do have Campbell's Howe Truss Bridge, and that's basically this bridge without the covering on it. But I don't think I'm going to use that up there. I think instead I'm going to go with this Scale Structures Limited Dinky Creek Bridge, which was modeled after an actual bridge that I believe was taken out in some floods with snowmelt a number of years ago. But I think you'll see why I'd like to do this. This bridge, I think, is, well, we can measure it, but I think it's more like 60-some feet long. Let's see which one of these diagrams are here. That's what this truss bridge looks like. So yeah, quite a bit different than a Howe truss, and should be fun to build. And if you're not familiar with SS Limited, they made a number of larger kits, but were known, I think, primarily for all their detail parts and stuff. But yeah, this should be fun. Let's just throw a scale on here and see what length that is. So that's about 68 feet. So that I could leave just as is and find another place on the upper deck for it. But that's a project for another day. But it is a recent eBay purchase. It's not all that common to get SS Limited kits on eBay. And the seller packaged two of them together for less than what this one kit normally goes for. So sometime I'll show you what that other kit is as well. But yeah, the Dinky Creek Bridge will show up on the Slate run as well. All right, so you kind of get the idea of what the summer plans are. I want to get the backdrop on the lower deck done, the backdrop on the upper deck done. To get that backdrop done on the upper deck, I need to redesign Campbell's covered bridge. And as I said, to build the backdrop, I don't need to build the bridge first, but I do need to redesign it. All right. At some point, I'll probably let you know how I make out on the redesign, and we'll move forward. Talk to you again soon. As always, if you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you would give it a thumbs up. And if you have not already done so, please subscribe to the channel. The only way YouTube promotes a channel is by certain metrics, and the thumbs up is one of those metrics. All right, talk to you again soon. Happy modeling.